Are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Spartans Nation, how on earth are you all doing? Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Locked On Spartans, your team every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And it's also brought to you by this dapper and handsome gentleman, Colton Pouncy of The Athletic. He does it all. He covers football. He covers basketball. He brings youth and vibrance to the MSU beat. What don't you do over there, man? How on earth are you doing? It has been a hot minute. Thank you so much for joining, Colton.
I'm doing great, man. I don't deserve that intro, but I'll happily take it.
I can't go back and change it. That you're gonna have to settle with it. So sorry about that. What a whirlwind it's been around East Lansing. You know, just casual, busy around college sports in late April. Casual for Michigan State. The news of the day, though, and it's not breaking news. I think everyone kind of somewhat saw it coming, especially if you saw his Instagram story post last night, because that's the best way to digest news these days. Joey Hauser's back, man. This is, I think, great for Michigan State. But in your opinion, what's the best thing about Joey Hauser that MSU gets to benefit from next season? Is it that three-point shooting, experience, or is it something completely different?
I think it's, a combination of a few things. The three-point shooting for sure, especially in Big Ten play. You could tell towards the end of the season that he was getting more confident in the shot, was just letting it fly instead of overthinking a little bit maybe. So I think if you're getting that Joey Hauser back, that's obviously a plus. But Joey Hauser is also a player who always did the dirty work that I think a lot of fans and people watching from afar just kind of overlooked. I know his career probably hasn't gone how most people expected when he first transferred from Marquette, but he did a lot of things like his defense. There were times where like the viral plays will go out there where he gets burned, but a lot of times he was holding his own against some dudes, especially in that the Davidson game. He was doing pretty well. Obviously, he was big offensive game in that one too. But yeah, I just think overall it's good for Michigan State. It's like you mentioned, people found that out by Instagram where he was kind of saying, "Hey, I need a roommate for East Lansing next year." So I think that kind of gave things away. But yeah, having him back, I think is a good thing overall for Michigan State. He's a veteran player. We don't really know what the big situation is going to look like, especially with a guy like Julius Marble transferring out, already losing Marcus Bingham. So I think having some, a guy that's been in the rotation, that started games, and just having that veteran experience back is a good thing for Michigan State, and I think they're probably happy to have him back for sure.
That was fun. I had a great time talking about good news for Michigan State basketball. Let's change that right now, because this is the news that we all know by now. Julius Marble, he is in the transfer portal, presumed starting center next year. Also, Jalen Bridges, a transfer that they were going after. He's committed to Baylor. He committed before he even made his visit to Michigan State. So things are just going great right now. Should we be slamming the panic button for this offseason so far? Because right now, as it stands, and I forgot the third thing. As the days dwindle further into the offseason, it's seeming more likely that Max Christie will not be coming back. So right now, hey, 9 scholarship players for Michigan State. You have 2 centers. One of them played 4 minutes last season per game. The other one's a true freshman that's not even here. Woo, we're having a great time. Panic button time for Michigan State fans, or are you going to take us all to therapy and tell us to just chill the F out right now? Just take it away.
I wouldn't be hitting the panic button just yet, but
okay.
I mean, I don't think it's been a great offseason so far. Hauser news aside, yeah, I mean, they couldn't land Bridges. He committed elsewhere. I think they've been kind of hesitant with the transfer portal. We just even haven't seen them, going after guys or creating contact. And maybe that's happening behind the scenes, but a lot of the stuff is public, so we can hear about it if it's out there. So that leads me to believe they're being somewhat selective about who they go after. And then, Max Christie, if he stays in the draft, that's a huge blow, because a lot of people were counting on him to be the guy on this team next year. I was told, if we bulk him up a little bit, put like 20 pounds of muscle on him, having another year in the system, he's going to, take that leap that we're all waiting to see. If he's not there, obviously, that hurts Michigan State's overall. It hurts their
small problem.
Small problem, right? Yeah. So it hurts the outlook of that team next year, which I think, if he's in the mix, you have some good pieces that you can build around. We saw AJ Hogarth take a step. Tyson Walker got more comfortable late in the year. If Joey Hauser is playing like he did at the end of the season, that's a plus, obviously. And you got some young, talented players coming in, and Jaden Akins who can maybe take a step forward too. So they've got some good pieces. If they can add from the portal, maybe a center an athletic center who can go up and grab a rebound and play some defense, and maybe a wing, regardless if Christie's gone or not. You've got enough, I think, maybe there to compete, but just the way this offseason's gone, the portal has not been active. They could be losing some more guys, and they also have to fill a bench spot, with Dwayne Stevens going to Western Michigan. So that's another thing. So, yeah, I would not say it's been a great offseason for Michigan State, but it's still early. They've got a lot of time to kind of turn things around.
I would just tamper and be like, hey, all right, Oscar Tshiebwe, we'll give you the $2 million that you're rumored to be getting from Kentucky, and you get to be a player coach. We'll give you that assistant role too. I'm down for anything at this point right now. So I think it was, and I apologize if I get this podcast wrong, I believe it was the Inside the Locker Room podcast where Tom Izzo made an appearance, Jason Strayhorn, Brian Masalam, they do great work over there. And I believe that Izzo on that podcast hinted at that Malik Hall might be undergoing somewhat of a position change or kind of a remix. And I think a good number of people said, oh, cool, he'll be like a 3-4 kind of guy. And I'm like, I sounds like a 4-5, especially now that Julius Marble's out of the mix. Okay, here's the question. Should Michigan State fans just be watching nothing but Villanova highlights over the summer, Houston highlights over the summer, just to really get all in with small ball? Because that's the only way I see this going now, right? Unless we're just screwed.
I don't know if Malik has the consistent skills enough to be a 3 full-time.
Right. Yeah.
He's sort of a tweener, and that's kind of what he's been. And, he can be a successful one with Michigan State. We saw him kind of hit his stride midseason before he kind of tailed off towards the end. But he can be a productive player. I just don't know if that 4 or 5 spot, full-time, is a good move for him just because he's lacking size. And one thing that Tom Izzo always talked about throughout the year was we don't really have – other than Marcus Bingham, I guess, was a one player who could, grab a rebound. He's got the size. But he also said we don't have a player who can really post up and give us a bucket down low. I think some of that interior defense, it could have been better. So my thought going into the offseason was, okay, yeah, they're going to go out and get a center from the transfer portal who can do some of those things that Tom Izzo had talked about and said he wanted. So if the plan is just to move Malik Hall and play a small ball lineup, I don't know how it's going to work. It kind of contradicts what he was telling us, midseason and beyond. So I'm not really sure about that move. If that's the direction he's thinking about going, I didn't listen to that podcast, but I guess we'll see what they want to do with the league.
Right. Yeah, that's a totally stay tuned deal. But hey, the offseason is for speculation, man. So this is what it's all about. 2 more questions on basketball before we just flip entirely to football for the rest of the show here. And I just want to make one sad question. Then I want to end on a high note here. Oscar Tshiebwe, of course, Kentucky, just Mr. Doer of all things down there, player of the year last year. He announces that he's coming back. That's Michigan State's first opponent next year. So over under 69.5 combined points and rebounds for Oscar Tshiebwe next year, especially if MSU doesn't get a center out of the portal. Are you hammering the over, or are you just going to sprinkle some on the over of that?
If Malik is playing the 5, I'll hammer the over right there.
Okay. No. Nope. This is a happy podcast. I'm having a decent day so far. We started with good news. Joey Hauser's coming back. How about this to just end things? Say something nice about MSU basketball. That's the best question I got. It's not even a question. I'm just kind of asking you to do something. What's something fun? Yeah.
Cassius Winston a couple years ago. Yeah. Final Four. They beat Duke.
People forget that, Colton. People forget that. That's what I'm talking about. Yep, there we go. Okay, yeah, that's all I needed from you. Joey Hauser's back. We beat Duke, but it's 3 years ago, so that's right. Suck it, Coach K. R.I.P. Bozo. All right, we're gonna switch it to football because we got a lot to tackle here in a hot second. But Colton, I gotta send you to the bench to talk to you fine people about Athletic Greens, gang. Do you want better gut health, more energy, an optimized immune system? Do you hate taking pills and vitamins and just want something that tastes great? Well, Athletic Greens has the goods for you. With just one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, adaptogens. That all sounds very scientific and fancy, and it helps you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. We could all use help on those things in the offseason before we dive into another year of Michigan State athletics. And right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition Just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different vitamins and pills and supplements to look out for your health. And to make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/college. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/college to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. And as we welcome Colton Pouncy back on. Hey, just want to thank you for making Locked On Spartans your first listen every single day here in the Locked On Podcast Network. Colton, did I sell you on some AG1 right there? Are you smashing that purchase button right now?
I think you did, honestly. That sounds pretty good. And honestly, that was a flawless ad read. I appreciate that. That was good
I
stuff.
can't lie. I bumble, my way through every ad read. I think that's like my first perfect game that I've had in like 7 months.
That was flawless.
Know as well as anyone. It will. I promise it will not happen again. Hey, spring game. I always got to use the air quotes when I talk about it. It happens on Saturday, and what better time to overreact to every single thing that happened in that? Well, then right now, do you have any like massive takeaway from that game, or I guess what point blank? What was your biggest takeaway from the spring game, if anything? I guess the answer can be no, you didn't have one, but what fun.
Yeah, I would kind of point to defense, and obviously there's a lot of talk about the secondary and if they can not be the worst in college football this year.
That'd be nice, yeah.
But I also think, like, when you look at the defense overall, I think it'll be better just because they've added a lot of talent in different areas. I think they're expecting improvement in certain areas. Versatility, foot speed. That's the thing I kind of saw the most. Like, Aaron Brule was out there covering wide receivers as a linebacker and, going, catching up with them and knocking down passes. I was like, okay, he's going to be a plus in pass coverage as a linebacker. That was sort of a weakness last year.
Totally.
I look at a guy like Jacoby Windman, a transfer from UNLV. He had 119 tackles last year. I think he's going to be a dude. Darius Snow making the switch to linebacker from nickel. I think he's still going to play both. But to me, what you can do with him, you can make him this versatile chess piece on defense where – and he mentioned this after the spring practice that, if they're running with 2 tight ends, I can go on the field and I can match up with the tight end. If they're going 11 personnel with 3 wide receivers, we can put in a nickel, maybe a cover nickel like Chester Kimbrough, who can match up with those wide receivers on the inside. So I think they have some flexibility with all these pieces they've added. Darius Snow, to me, might be the key of this defense. He's a really intriguing player. I think he'll be okay at linebacker considering his bloodline's there. I think that'll be a good spot for him.
Right?
Yeah. And I also think, the pass rush with Brandon Jordan, I think those guys are going to get better. He's really a teacher. That's kind of, he breaks things down to their roots. We'll work things out slowly, and you see it translating to the field. You see the clips that he posts on Twitter of these NFL dudes. They start in the summer working in the gym or outside on the field, and then he posts the clips of them using those moves in action. So I think anytime you're a young player, you see a guy doing that and working with those types of players, you're going to listen to everything he says. You're going to try to take what he says to heart and get better, improve yourself. So I'm expecting those guys to get better. Jeff Petrowski should have a big year. Chris Bogle, transfer from Florida, I think he's going to be a big-time player for Michigan State. So they've added some pieces. They've got some improvement internally. So I think the defense is going to be a lot better than it was last year.
And before I get to my next question, it's Bogle, not Boggle, like I've been saying for like 4 straight months. Is that?
I think true? It's Bogle. Yeah, unless everyone's saying it wrong.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Yeah. That's fantastic. Got to go back and edit 4 months worth of episodes right there. Kind of going along with this whole defense conversation, I've been called a lunatic. I've been called a madman. I've gotten threats mailed to me. I woke up with the horse's head at the foot of my bed.
Sounds like a normal day for you, though.
Just, I call it Wednesday over here in the Sheehan household. Because I said this the other day, like, is Cal Halliday not going to start this year after being like an All-American freshman, like an All-Big Ten freshman team, starter last year, pretty good? Like, is he coming off the bench at linebacker this year after having such a great freshman season? Like, because with the transfers and everyone they have, especially with Snow now becoming this linebacker, like, that's oddly on the table, but maybe it makes sense. I don't know. What's like your thoughts on the whole thing?
I think, it's tough to say because when you're running 4-2-5, only 2 of those dudes can get on the field. So
right.
I could see them maybe getting a little bit more versatile, playing more 4-3, maybe 3-3-5 a little bit, just to get a third guy out there. Because they have 4 guys who can probably start for this defense at linebacker between Snow, Halliday, Brule, and women. Crouch, we'll see what happens with him, but he was banged up the entire spring. So, and also I just think when you add so many guys at linebacker, it's kind of like maybe he looks around and tries to hit the portal again, look for another opportunity for himself. I'm not really sure. But that linebacker spot's really interesting to me. And like the way I see it, they're just trying to accumulate talent and say, all right, the best 2 guys will be out there on the field more than the others. And I think that's a good strategy to have. That seems to be the plan that they're going with. And it's weird to say considering Cal, like he made our freshman All-America team at the Athletic, and he had a really good year. But at the same time, I think he can improve, and I think he would be the first to say that. Pass coverage a little bit. He's got areas to work out too. So I don't know if it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to start. But regardless of who starts and who comes off the bench, all those guys are going to play a lot. And I think that's one of the things that they wanted to do. Where you look at the defensive line, they rotate so frequently, it doesn't really matter who's out there at a given time. I think they want linebacker to be the same way. So that's kind of how I view that position.
Let's just go back to pass coverage just because it is going to be the story of the offseason. Like, how optimistic would you be if you were like an MSU fan? Because on one hand, like, hey, only way to go is up, right, from last year. And number two, Scotty Hazelton commented on this last week that, well, they got the full room in for this spring, whereas last year they had to wait to the summer to add 3 guys and talk techniques, scheme, yada, yada, yada. And listen, all good things are coming out right now. But then again, it's not like a coach is going to be in spring practice telling you guys, the media, like, yeah, no, it's going to be another really bad year for us this year. So, like, how do you dissect truth from being a little skeptical? Or I guess where's your mindset with this whole defensive backfield thing and coming off such a brutal year last year? I mean,
it was brutal.
It was not good. That's why I drink. Yeah.
I would say I think depth has a lot to do with it. Last spring they had 1 scholarship corner, and that was Kalen Gervin. So not great.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So obviously they added some guys. Chester Kimbrough came in, Ronald Williams came in, Marquis Lowry, and Chuck Brantley. But the problem was Lowry was hurt for basically most of the year. I think maybe played like 6 games, half the season, if that. Gotcha. Chuck Brantley got hurt kind of second half of the season, wasn't able to come back. I think he had surgery at some point. He's back in spring, but he was still wearing, a red no contact jersey. So he's still working his way back. Ron Williams was sort of banged up towards the end. And Kimbrough had his ups and downs as a player. I think the Nebraska game, he had the big play, but he struggled in pass coverage sometimes. So I think that's why one of the reasons why they're trying to move him inside to nickel. So I think between some of those moves, like Kimbrough at nickel, bringing in Amir Speed, who started 3 games on a stacked Georgia defense, that's going to help you. He's also just massive. He's just a huge dude. Like I remember watching a video of him. Giant. There's a video of him and Mel Tucker. Mel Tucker's a big dude himself.
Right.
And he's like trying to size up Amir Speed. And I'm just like, this dude's just towering over this entire position. That's amazing. You wonder why he's not playing like wide receiver or something. But
no kidding. Right.
Between all those guys, Ron Williams got better late in the season, I thought. So he should be, I think he was a little banged up this spring too, but he'll come back in the fall. So I think between all those pieces, if you can bank on health, that's a really solid top 4 between maybe Ronald, Amir. I would imagine those 2 are the starters, and then Chuck and Marquis, who I thought played well when he actually was in the games. He just got to stay healthy. He's a little thin, maybe bulk up a little bit. That's a solid starting 4 rotation if you want to go that way. So I think from there, it's just a matter of staying healthy, guys getting more comfortable in the system, and maybe a guy like Amir Speed sort of solidifying that position to where you don't need to rely on some of the younger guys early,
Top 5 defense is all I heard you say. That's all I heard every time.
Takeaway.
Every time you said another word, like it's just the ranks moved off my head, and like I'm in full-fledged Homer fan delirium right now. I'm all in.
That's what spring is for, right?
Oh, it's the best. I absolutely love it. This is great. Oh, it's fantastic. And also, like, for as stressful as basketball's been so far this offseason, like, I got to find the other end of the pendulum. Like, if I'm going to get that low in one sport, I got to get this high in another sport. And that's everything I wanted to hear right now. But we're not done talking about football yet. If you care to stick around and talk about the offensive side of the ball, that's cool. See you. I got to see if I could pitch my second perfect game, though, on an ad read and talk to you fine folks about betonline.net. That's right. Best time of year. We've got it all going on right now. We got some golf in the mix. We got MLB in the mix. We got NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. Don't know a single thing about hockey, but I will be betting my face off on that dandy of a hectic sport in the playoffs, especially. BetOnline.net, it's your number one source for all your betting stats and sports info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today, use your mobile device, learn more about the trends in action at BetOnline, where the game starts. And as we welcome Colton Pouncy back on for a third segment, he stuck around for all three, guys. I can't believe it. One day he's not going to do this, and I will understand. I got to just ramble for a hot second because I just want to clear something up. I'm talking about the offensive line after the spring game and how that is obviously a worry for me and a lot of State fans. And I think I use the example, let's say Spencer Brown gets rolled up on and, okay, it's Ethan Boyd's turn now. I want to make it clear that, I don't think the young guys are bad players or that they are just trash and should go to the transfer portal or that won't be good players here. My worry is that behind the ones on the offensive line, the twos have little to no experience, and that worries me, especially in a position where, age and experience really does help you. So I just want to clear it up right now. I think the offensive line is full of talent. It's just, I don't know if it'll be there yet. So with that said, Colton, what's your thought on the offensive line? Is it as big of a worry as it is for most State fans? And are you also hearing rumblings on some younger guys being maybe a little more ready than many of us fans like myself think?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly the concern, especially with this situation where, the guys behind Spencer Brown and Jarrett Horse are both redshirt freshmen. You got Brandon Baldwin, who's been playing more on the left side, I believe, and Ethan Boyd, who's been playing more on the right side. So not just there, but also, some younger guys like Kevin Wigginton is the backup left guard right now.
Right.
Teams. And, we talked to Chris Kapilvik earlier this offseason, and he was kind of I see some positives, I see some negatives. Obviously, the negatives are those guys are getting beat in practice just because, one, our defensive line is really good.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to go up against Simeon Barrow and Jacob Slade every day. That's just a nightmare.
Tough.
Especially if you're a second-year player, Tough task. But at the same time, they just got to get their feet wet, and that's part of the process. Every offensive lineman goes through this. They're just going through it sooner, where they're getting these major reps, basically getting first-team reps as redshirt freshmen. You don't see that everywhere. Most of the time it takes a couple years, maybe 2 to 3 years to actually break through and become a starter and get those snaps. So it's been happening a little bit earlier. I think it's sort of accelerating their timeline a little bit, but I also think long-term that's going to help them out, because if they're getting that experience going up against Power 5 starters, their second spring or maybe their first spring for some of these guys, it's going to help them not only this season, but in the future, because they'll be further along than they probably would have otherwise. So when you look at a Kevin Wigginton, you look at a Ethan Boyd, you look at a Brandon Baldwin, Gino Vandemark is another guy who I think is probably going to play in the mix a little bit more this year. I think this is a positive overall, long-term, like I've mentioned. But yeah, in the meantime, it does kind of suck. Those dudes are, getting it handed to them every single day in practice, and there's only 6 or 7 of them. I think what they were doing for the spring practice, they had 8 offensive linemen. 2 of those are walk-on defensive linemen who made the switch just so they would have bodies there. So they had 6 scholarship linemen, basically, which is not good, but that's just the situation. But, they're going to get Jarrett Horse is going to be back. Jay McClain's coming back. All those guys were banged up. Matt Carrick had surgery last year. They're bringing in Brian Green, and I also think they have one more portal spot. I would be shocked if they didn't target an offensive lineman or maybe probably a tackle more specifically with that final spot. Just some guy, even if he's not a starter, some guy who has some experience, who can be a backup tackle at left or right, just so you're not forced to put one of the redshirt freshmen in case anything happens to the starters, because it's really rare to go through an entire fall season without injuries along the offensive line. So some of those guys might be tested if they don't make at least one more move. So it'll be interesting to follow for sure. Yeah,
and MSU fans know that as well as anyone, that it's tough to go through a whole season without offensive linemen getting hurt. I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, just like you're saying, the whole baptism by fire thing for these young offensive linemen, I'm watching the spring game, and I think it was on a few occasions, we're watching Chris Bogle go up against early enrollee Jack Nickel. It's oh my God, pray for Jack right now. Oh my God, you poor son of a gun. But hey, okay, that's, again, you're going to grow from this sort of thing. With that said, who's going to be – this is such a lazy question that gets probably asked to you all the time, but what new face on offense is going to be the biggest impact for Michigan State this year? Is it going to be a tight end like Daniel Barker out of Illinois, Brian Green you just mentioned on the offensive line, or hey, we got running backs coming in? We also got a sweet young receiver in Jeremy Bernard. Like, who do you think is actually going to help this offense the most instantly next season?
I think you go a few different routes. I would probably lean. I like Jarek Broussard a lot. He wasn't here this spring, but I mean, he was the 2020 Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year. I think he's got probably the most wiggle out of anyone in that running back room. I'm not trying to compare him to Kenneth Walker III.
Sure.
But he's got some of those qualities where Kenneth would break a tackle and take it like 60 yards. Jarek's the guy who can break a tackle and get you, 6, 7, 8, 9, not consistently, but enough to where it can make an impact over the course of a game. Low center of gravity, takes care of the ball. He's a little bit smaller, so I kind of worry about injury concerns. So maybe that's where, Jalen Berger, they try to, get him more in the mix than, because Kenneth was taking all those snaps and all those carries a year ago. They didn't really need a committee there. So maybe if you're feeling somewhat concerned about Jarek Broussard's health, you try to get more of those guys in the mix. For Davion Prim a lot. I think Berger will play a lot. Maybe they carve out a role for Harold Joyner on third downs. He's a good receiving back. So they've got some options there at running back for sure. But I would say Jarek and Daniel Barker, like you mentioned, I think he's another guy that's going to come in, the transfer from Illinois. Tight end, I think he's a veteran guy who, if Malik isn't quite ready to take that leap, I think that takes some pressure off of him. So they can kind of put Malik out there to do his thing, put Barker out there to do his thing, and all of a sudden you have a pretty good 1-2 punch at tight end. So those are two guys I'd probably look at.
My favorite thing in the world to do, and I think I've done it like maybe 8 times so far, is say that Jarek Broussard is not Kenneth Walker, but that's like my favorite thing to do. And because it's
you got to put the qualifier out there.
Exactly. Like there are some similarities out there, but like it's a poor man's Kenneth Walker essentially. And that even a poor man's Kenneth Walker, damn good player. Like you take that
absolutely.
10 out of 10 times. That's awesome. Last question. How sick are you of hearing or talking about spring game attendance? Or do you think it actually has some credence to how just the lifeblood of a program is?
No, I think that's stupid.
Perfect. Awesome. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. I mean,
excellent.
Like here, it was cold. It was like Easter
Miserable.
weekend. Like no one's trying to. I understand, and it wasn't even a spring game; it was a practice. So I understand how it's not the most sexy spring game out there, but
can't tailgate. Like, come on, man, come on, Alan
Haller,
come on. You free kegs for everyone, Alan. Come on, let's go.
I don't think it speaks to like we don't need to make any like grand declarations about what it says about a football program, because some of those SEC schools that pack the stadiums, there's nothing else to do in that state or in that city, so I understand it. It's whatever. What matters more is if you can create an environment in the fall when these recruits are visiting and taking official visits and things like that, or just over the summer when it's a little bit warmer, those official visits are going to be huge. So if you're talking about recruiting impact and all this stuff, that weather and stuff doesn't really matter to me. It's more like big picture, what you can do when you get those guys on campus for their officials. So that's kind of how I view it.
Yeah. Wow. No kidding. I know that's just like the favorite thing for like just us fans to just banter about, and just of course rival schools just yell at each other about too. Like because we're getting to that point in the offseason where I think things are going to start heating up online, where both fan bases, Michigan State, are going to start getting bored, and we'll just start.
There's nothing to talk about. You need some content, and that's a good talking point. In the meantime, I'll get you through end of April, early May. Something else will come up, and then you'll talk about that. So. It's sort of
like some random like 4-star tight end will commit to either school in the dead of June, and that'll start like World War III. And I can't wait for it. Let's go. I got to get back in my bag here of yelling at strangers online about college athletics. That's what I'm talking about, Colton. Anything you're working on at the Athletic that you want to tease, or are you just using like the next few months to just recharge your incredibly drained batteries after the hard work you've done the last God knows how many months for on the beat of Michigan State?
I will say I am a little exhausted because this is my first year doing football and basketball. So we went from
that's a grind.
Football coverage started like July for Big Ten Media Days, finished in December, then straight into basketball. Basketball was over in March, then straight into spring football. So I am a little gassed. I don't know how these people do it. The other beat writers do it full time.
No kidding.
But we'll get through. I think I'm taking all of next week off just to recharge. But I will have some stuff in the meantime. Going to have a recruiting story and just where Michigan State stands with some of these top players they're going after probably in the next few days. I think I'll have a story on Kenneth Walker next week ahead of the draft. So yeah, we'll have some stuff to talk about for sure.
Lovely. So the Athletic isn't just spending money on you to go to all inclusive to recharge down in like Cabo St. Lucas or anything like that. No, that's all right.
I'll take that up with my bosses and see if that's something we can work in to the budget. But yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Put that on top of my to-do list. Threaten the Athletics upper management on behalf of
tweet out our HQ account until
there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Say less. Yeah, you got it, man. All right. Well, Colton, this is awesome. Thank you so much for joining again. Especially as your gas tank's on E, probably just talking about all things MSU. But hey, for 30 minutes, I had an awesome time. You're the best, Colton. Check him out at the Athletic. He does fantastic work. Just a great guy all around. Colton Pouncy. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, man. All right.